Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I get asked a lot for my advice on how to increase your credit score. So in this video, I want to explain two of the main credit score factors that I've focused on over the past few years, and it's helped me to increase my credit score to levels of 750 and higher with pretty minimal effort. Now, it's no secret that while a credit score is very important to have for a number of reasons, it's just something that's not taught to us in school as we're growing up. And I think this has led to a lot of confusion around exactly what we should be doing to get a good credit score, because there's a lot of myths and a lot of rumors out there, but it doesn't have to be that hard if we just focus on some of the main things that drive the credit scores that we have. So that's why in this video, I wanted to focus on the two biggest factors of credit scores, because if people focus on these two factors, then they'll be able to significantly increase their credit scores over time. Now, some of you may already know these factors, but I just wanted to share my thoughts here. So those factors are going to be payment history and amounts owed / credit utilization. Now, the more that we look into how credit scores are calculated, the more that we'll understand why exactly we want to focus on these two specific factors right here, because these factors combined are going to account for about 65% of what makes up your credit score. So if we can focus on and understand these factors pretty well, then we'll have a good chance to improve our credit scores. So we'll talk about payment history and amounts owed / credit utilization here in this video, what they are, why they're important, and what I did to use these things to help increase my own credit score. With that, let's get started here, because I have a lot of information that I want to cover in this video and a few examples that I want to go over as well. As always, everything here on my channel is completely free and just meant to be educational content. If you enjoy that, then go ahead and tap the like button down below and consider subscribing for more content just like this, because all those things help to push this video out to a larger audience just like yourself. So thank you very much for doing that. Now, like I mentioned before, payment history and amounts owed / credit utilization are two of the biggest factors that are going to impact your credit score, and they account for a combined 65% or around 2/3 of that credit score. And the best part is that not only do these two factors have the greatest impact to our credit score, but they're also two of the easiest factors for us to control ourselves through some good credit habits. So let's first take a look at payment history, which accounts for about 35% of our credit scores. Now, when we look at payment history, it really makes sense why it should have the highest impact to our scores, because if you have lenders or landlords or anyone else that wants to take a look at our credit scores, all they really want to do is make sure that we have a good history of making payments on time. That way they feel more comfortable with lending us new money, renting us an apartment, or anything similar to that. And the way that we control this sounds obvious and it sounds easy, but we need to be paying our bills on time. So with credit card bills, every month that we use a certain credit card and we get a balance that comes through on that statement, we need to make sure that we make at least the minimum payment on that statement by the payment due date. By doing this, we're going to positively affect the payment history portion of our credit score. Now, you really should be paying off your entire statement balance by that payment due date. You'll usually see that there's some sort of minimum payment that's required by the payment due date, but if you don't pay off the entire statement balance, you'll carry over a portion of your unpaid balance to the next month, accrue interest, and really just be paying extra money to the credit card companies. And now it's a complete myth also that some people believe that you should carry a balance from month to month to help improve your credit score because it somehow makes you credit worthy or something like that. Do not carry a balance from month to month. All you're doing is paying extra that you really don't need to pay by making a payment on time and in full every single month. That will positively affect your payment history portion of your credit score, and that's all you need to do. Some quick tips here to help you make sure that you pay off that statement balance on time and in full every single month. Make sure that you have some sort of budget where you can track all your income versus your expenses and the other cash that you might have on hand. That way you know exactly how much cash you have to be able to pay off any credit card balances. Treat your credit card like a debit card or like cash, and only use it to make purchases that you already have the money set aside for. That way you can pay back the credit card company immediately if you want to. Also, take advantage of auto pay features or set reminders for yourself so that you don't forget to make those credit card payments, because even 1 or 2 missed payments could hurt your credit score a bit. Having a 100% payment history is one of the easiest ways to have a great positive impact to your credit score. Once you start to miss maybe 1 or 2 or 3 payments, you're really going to start to see that negative impact to your score, especially if you're very early on in your credit history. But if you do accidentally forget to make a credit card minimum payment by the payment due date and you realize it pretty quickly within a 30-day period after that payment due date, then just go ahead and make the minimum payment payment as soon as you can, because as long as you're within that 30-day period, the credit card company is not likely going to report that to the credit bureaus as a missed payment, so it's not going to negatively hurt your credit score just yet. So just make sure you go ahead, pay off anything that you owe the credit card companies that's overdue, but obviously try to pay it on time if you can. Okay, so payment history is pretty easy to see why it's such an important factor that helps determine our credit scores. You just have to remember to make your credit card payments on time, and also try not to use a credit card if you don't already have the money set aside to be able to pay off that credit card in full. But next, let's move on to amounts owed and credit utilization, because these seem to be areas of your credit score that people have the most questions about or they don't fully understand. Now, in short, amounts owed is going to have about a 30% impact to our credit scores, and what it does is it takes a look at the total amounts of debt that you owe in total, the different amounts of debt that you have across different accounts, and a bunch of other things like that. But most importantly, in this category, it's also going to take into account something called credit utilization. The easiest way to explain credit utilization is that it can be viewed as the total balances across all your credit cards divided by the total credit limits across all your cards. The credit utilization is also going to be looked at on a per card basis, so just keep that in mind here. You have to look at your utilization across each of your individual credit cards as well as across all your entire portfolio of credit cards combined. The reason why this is important to your credit score is because it's a representation of just how responsible you are with the credit you've been given. Think of it like this: if you're given $25,000 in total credit limits across all your cards, and then you turn around and you spend $20,000 on those cards in one billing cycle, well, first of all, you should probably call up your credit card issuers and ask for higher credit limits, because obviously you spend a lot of money. But second of all, if you're spending almost as much as your total combined credit limits, that's just gonna look pretty risky to lenders, because they're gonna worry that you might not be able to pay it all back. Generally, the lower the credit utilization percentage, the better. Now, you're gonna see certain websites out there that recommend that you aim for 30% or below, but honestly, even that's a bit too high. What's best, in my opinion, is that you should aim for below 10%, ideally in the low single digits, and just above 0%. So for example, if I have 3 credit cards and each one has a $5,000 credit limit, well, that's $15,000 in total revolving credit that's available to me. If I had a $2,000 balance on each card, that's gonna be a 40% credit utilization on each of those cards. That would also be $6,000 in total balances, so take that and divide it by $15,000 in total credit limits across those 3 cards. That's also going to be a credit utilization of 40%, and all that is a little high, so that could negatively affect that person's credit score. I like to try to keep my total combined credit utilization across all of my credit cards at around 1% ideally. Obviously, that may vary and I may go a little bit above or a little bit below that, but that's still a very good place to be. For me though, as someone who's already built up my credit score to a pretty good spot, I'm not really too worried about the exact credit utilization number that gets reported. I'm just trying to keep it as low as possible. Sometimes I even do pay off my credit card statement in full before it closes. That way it's a 0% utilization that gets reported. My goal and a good general rule of thumb is to keep credit utilization as low as possible and to try to get it somewhere in the low single digit percentages. Now next, here are some tips that I have that have helped me to consistently keep my credit utilization number in this low range. So you'll want to be aware of what exactly the statement closing date is for each of your credit cards, how many credit cards you have, what the credit limits are on each of those cards, and what your monthly spending habits are. The reason why we want to know all of this information is because we know what the equation is for calculating credit utilization. And because we know that credit utilization has a high impact to our credit scores, we could take all this information and use it to our advantage. That way we can basically control what credit utilization gets reported to the credit bureaus. That way we can have a positive impact to our credit score. So first, knowing the statement closing date for each of your credit cards is going to be very important, because on that statement closing date, your credit card issuer is going to take a snapshot of your account balance and your total credit limit and then report that to the credit bureaus. And this is where we can start to control what gets reported. So to keep things simple here, let's say that you only have one credit card with a $4,000 credit limit. You put $2,000 of spending on this credit card during this current billing cycle, which is going to come to an end in just a few days. You know that your credit utilization right now is 50% when you take that $2,000 balance divided by the $4,000 credit limit. If you wait until after the statement closing date to pay off that balance, that's fine. You won't get charged any interest and you won't have any fees for doing so, as long as you make that payment by the payment due date, which is typically a few weeks after the statement closing date. But on the statement closing date, that $2,000 balance and the 50% credit utilization is going to get reported to the credit bureaus, and those are amounts that will probably have a negative effect to your credit score. So we could probably do better there, and there's a few different options that we have to get a better credit utilization reported. First, we could pay off some or all of that $2,000 balance before the statement closing date. That way we only get a small amount or no amount that gets reported to the credit bureaus. So maybe we decide to pay off $1,900 of that $2,000 balance before the statement closing date, and then on that statement closing date we only have a $100 balance remaining that gets reported. That way that lowers our credit utilization to just 2.5%, and that is much better than the 50% credit utilization that we had in the earlier example. Or we could decide to pay off the entire $2,000 balance, which would then get reported as a 0% credit utilization rate on the day that the statement closes. Now there's a little debate out there about what is better, having 1% utilization or having 0% utilization. I'm not gonna get into it all in this video, but the argument is that with 1% utilization, it's showing that you're using a very small amount of the credit that you've been given, but at least you're using some of it and you're using it responsibly, so that is gonna have more of a positive impact than 0%. I personally have had times where I just have 1 to 2% of credit utilization get reported across all my credit cards. And then I've had other times where I just decide to pay off all my credit cards in full before the statement closing date. That way a 0% utilization gets reported. Overall, I think both ways work pretty well, but to generalize everything here, 0% credit utilization is much better than having a high credit utilization, and then slightly above 0 utilization is gonna be slightly better than a 0% utilization when looking at how to impact your credit score. Now again, all these examples here are very simplified. There's also a few other options out there as you start to look to expand into having multiple credit cards. One option is that you could ask your credit card company for a credit limit increase, and this would affect the denominator of the credit utilization equation. If you went from having a $2,000 balance on a $4,000 credit limit to having a $2,000 balance on a $10,000 credit limit, that would drop your credit utilization from 50% down to 20%. Now a credit limit increase, especially a big one like this, might not always be possible, but this is where you can start to look at adding new additional credit cards to your overall credit card portfolio, and by doing this, you're thereby then increasing the total amount of credit limits that you have in that credit utilization equation, which could potentially then lead to positive impacts to your overall credit score. If you think about it, going from $2,000 of monthly spending on one credit card with a $4,000 limit to $2,000 of monthly spending across 5 credit cards, each with a $4,000 limit, that is going to lower your credit utilization all the way down to just 10%. So by knowing things like your statement closing dates, your total number of credit cards, your total credit limits, and the amount of monthly spending that you do, you can start to control the amount of credit utilization that gets reported to the credit bureaus. All right, now hopefully all that was easy enough to understand, but of course, if you have any questions, then be sure to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them, and if I can't really answer them in too much detail in the comments, then I'll be happy to also make a future video about it as well. Now, outside of the 2 main factors that we talked about throughout this video that account for the 65% of your credit score, there's still a few remaining factors that account for the remaining 35%. There's 15% for length of credit history, 10% for credit mix, and 10% for new credit. A lot of those are pretty self-explanatory, but they all have kind of one thing in common, and that is the fact that in general, they're all gonna play out over the long term, over the course of several years across your financial journey. There's really not too much that you can do for these smaller factors in the short term. As you apply for new credit cards, new different types of loans, along with your already aging different types of credit accounts, all this stuff is gonna slowly but surely help to improve your credit score over time. Now, I'll be making more videos about credit scores and how you can increase them in the very near future over the next few weeks, because I talk a lot about credit cards and other personal finance topics here on my channel. I know that I talk a lot about some really great credit cards here on this channel that have allowed me to earn thousands of dollars worth of value that I put towards free travel, and those cards often require you to have a good credit score to be approved. So hopefully all the information that I talked about here in this video and other videos here on my channel will help you to get approved for cards like the Amex Gold Card or the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Chase Sapphire Preferred or other credit cards like that, because there's so much value out there to get from credit cards, not to mention all the value from having a high credit score to get lower interest rates and save tens of thousands of dollars on things like mortgages or car loans or other products like that. So be sure to subscribe to my channel down below for more content just like this. And once you do have that high credit score to get approved for some good credit cards, then go check out this video over here where I talk about my favorite picks for the best credit cards of 2021 and 2022. As always, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.